guys, welcome to the Big Plan Podcast. We are going, so our new series that we're going to be doing for our new season is really just about the Josephs and who we are, what we do, like funny things, serious topics, but kind of bringing it back to family, which is kind of how we're rebranding this, and really going back to the basics or the grassroots of how we started this. So today we have our beautiful daughters, so Sydney well, it's in her office, technically. This is our studio. It's her office. Our very pink background, as you can see.
Yep.
So what we're going to discuss...
Oh, sorry. Yes, my sister was just twerking.
She's just twerking in the window here at our family office. But what we were going to talk about were kind of like the differences of, like, why you go to one parent over another for certain things that come up in your life. And like, if there's differences in things that like daddy would have to work on to talk about the things you don't go to him to, and the things that I should work on for the things that you don't come to me to, and like, kind of like learning from that. So welcome, Sydney.
Thank you. Happy.
So like, give us like an example of, obviously everyone has their own parenting style, right? So that's kind of why when you have two parents, like you all teach and have certain relationships, and you kind of work on your love language with your certain children, with your certain children, to like figure out and navigate how to teach them, learn from them, what they need out of you and things like that. So give us some examples, because obviously Daddy and I, for the most part, are on the same page with a lot of things.
Totally.
But kids always strategically know which parents to go to for which things.
Yeah. I think, I think for health-related things, I will 9 times out of 10 go to you, because I think, one, you just have a lot more of a out of our whole family, thorough understanding of like the health world. And also, if I tell you I have a headache, I know for sure it won't be just like, take an Advil. It's like, are you sweating? Do you have a fever? Is your throat closing? Are you, can you breathe? Can you see? Can you so then I feel like, okay, if I can breathe, I can't see, I'm not vomiting. Like, if I check all the boxes, that means like, I'm going to be fine. So because you ask all the questions, and if I have an off answer, we dig deeper, and then we might wind up at the hospital, but we know that we're going to be fine. So if it's health related, medications, follow-ups from doctor's appointments I need to schedule. If I just think I maybe have food poisoning or the stomach flu, whatever it may be, I call you first, because I think that just helps the health process. I say 9 times out of 10 because there's like exceptions, obviously, like with some of my concussion stuff, like as it relates to more specific therapies and stuff, like has like asked additional questions also because of Rothbart, our cousin. Yep, so he's like, he'll advise on when I should maybe reach out to David and be like, but 9 times out of 10, I call you typically first as it relates to anything health related.
And Daddy tends to be daughters. Sophia's still twerking in front of us.
If we're lucky, she'll come in and twerk for the camera.
Oh, that would be awesome. That would be really good.
Yeah. We have to ask.
So, but there's also, I know that there's certain things like I'm hypersensitive neurotic with it. So like, I will ask a bunch of questions, and sometimes you'll be like, I just only have a sore throat.
Like, just a sore throat. Like, my arm isn't falling off. I can still see.
Totally.
The world isn't going black. Like, it's just a little scratchy.
So then for that situation, it's worth to just like call Daddy and be like, I have a sore throat.
Yeah. Or not call anyone.
Or not call anyone. Just in case that Daddy happens to come back to me, and then
you're sitting next to him.
Right, and then all of a sudden,
Because I have fallen into that on accident on speakerphone where I didn't know you guys were together, and I'll call him and I'll say, oh, like, I think my asthma's been, like, if we're just catching up about something else, and he's like, oh, you sound off, you good? And I'm like, oh yeah, my asthma's been bad. And then suddenly you're like, well, what do you mean your asthma's been bad? And I'm like, well, I didn't know you were. And then you're like, wow, that's crazy. I simply didn't call you for that reason, but here you are. So that's one. But that's a good thing, because I feel very health safe in knowing that you will find out what's wrong and make sure it's not wrong anymore. So that's that.
Hypervigilant with a side of hyperneurotic.
Yeah, but that's okay. And then as it relates to something I would maybe call him with first, it would probably be maybe like some sort of, well, definitely as it relates to like, this is just like the nature of a dad role. Like when my car is broken, when like my AC broke the other day, I called him and I was like, oh my God, my air conditioning broken. Yeah, like truly, like even though he doesn't know how to fix the air conditioning,
Yes.
it just makes more sense in my brain
Totally.
to call my dad to, you know, for whatever reason, to be like, oh my God, my car is broken. What do I do?
Yeah.
So he's typically my first call for those types of things.
Yeah.
Even though he's just going to tell me to call someone else to pay them to come up and fix it. But
or he'll go arrive and take care of it. Like Sophie had a car accident the other day, and he got in the car
and went there and fixed
She
it.
was in town, so like it worked. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that's definitely one, just because I feel like that. Oh look. Oh, just kidding. Never mind. I thought we almost had another special guest, but we didn't wind up.
Maybe Josh will start twerking at the window.
Maybe. Oh, Sophie's still twerking in the window.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So I would say that for Do probably, and then, you know, as it relates to back to you, something that I feel like I would maybe call you with first is when analyzing like a situation with friends or a significant other or something in like a relationship driven way, personal, familial, romantic, whatever it may be. I feel like I tend to call you first because you help me see things from like a 360 viewpoint of like people and the way they interact. And yeah, our family's dancing in the window on the other side. If you want us to turn the camera, we will. But so they all, just so we know, they have the option to participate, but instead they're choosing to dance in the window for us. Oh, they're coming. They're both coming. This is the takeover.
We're giving the takeover.
And the camera got wider. A cameo.
This is a takeover.
Do you want to sit?
So what are we discussing today?
Our discussion today that we are joining in is what Sydney would go to you for first do on and reasons why, and what she would come to me first with and reasons why, and like the things that you would need to work on and why she doesn't go to those like certain things that she doesn't go to you first, and it's 3 things that I need to work on and why she doesn't come to me first.
Gotcha.
Even though we both agree, like for the most part, we kind of run things the same, like the way that me and you run things with the girls. But like it's just, you know, kids pick who they go to certain parents for certain reasons. My guess is Sophie hasn't answered these questions, but her answers are going to be exactly the same as Sydney's.
I'd assume, because you guys are also very, not like
Predictable.
Yes, I was about to say stuck in your mold. Predictable. Yeah, like you have very specific areas in which you excel in as people and as parents.
No, we're gonna
leave in a second.
Oh, you're leaving.
But I just cameo.
Oh, it's a cameo.
It's a cameo.
Don't worry about it, guys.
Oh, sure.
Okay, anyways, bye.
Finish your thought.
Oh, okay. I thought the cameo was over. But then there's specific things that you guys are really strong at, and then there's certain things that are just like any other person you just like don't excel at. And so that not in a mean way. It's like you shouldn't come to me for like a
just as like the most you are an average individual.
You're an average. No, as in like we are just people. As in like you should not come to me for science or math. Just like I'm not going to go to do for health related stuff. I'm just not going to do that. And so
water.
And so that's why I don't go to you.
Get sleep. Get good sleep.
Speaking of, you need to go take a nap.
But I thought you were driving to the airport.
I'm your driver to the airport.
Oh.
She just looked at me. She's like, you look very tired. I'm
So
very tired.
So he's
like, you should go take
anyways,
a
cameo over. Bye, guys.
The airport. She's like, I'll drive you.
Wow.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, thanks for the cameo. Thanks for the
But I'm going to see you before you leave.
Oh.
Okay.
Because I'm going to wait until you're done with this podcast.
Okay.
Oh.
Yep, this is kind of how the family works.
Bye, guys.
We come in, we go in, we work in the office, we grab people. And as Sophie agreed with you on the medical things, that checks out.
Yeah, so socially, I would say I come to you for just like friends, making sure that somebody doesn't feel left out, the best way to handle a potential friend conflict or a current friend conflict or anything like that. So I would say I'd probably call you mostly with those types of things. And then back to do probably like if somebody's like super business oriented, like if I am nervous about like a contract I'm reading and don't know how to interpret it, or the best ways to understand a potential deal as it relates to how we raise money for it, or how we piece together a really compelling story to raise money for a project. So I feel like, you know, it kind of depends on what it is, but I definitely feel like there are different things I go to each person for.
For sure. So like when you're
Sorry, my sister's still twerking at the window.
By the way, the office is a fishbowl. Like our offices are all glass, so like everybody that walks past, anything goes. Like it just becomes so like every once in a while, somebody would just walk past and start twerking. But I would say though, you and Sophie do go to do for friendship and relationship things
For
too.
sure.
So because our viewpoints, like I tend to be and more on the like empathetic, like, and not that Daddy can't be, but like I kind of look at it from one end, probably to the extreme sometimes, but then Daddy also tends to look at it from another end. So I do think that there is that, like, you almost can get a little bit of something from each one of us when it comes to that. Like I'm very much that Pollyanna sometimes where I'm like, okay, what about this and what about that? And Daddy will be like, not in a bad way. It's not a bad way, but sometimes Daddy was like, well, that's not fucking gonna work.
Yeah.
You know, like that kind of thing.
Totally. But I think that that's also where you have the balance of having a sibling where, because true. I think like there's a lot of things that we go to you both about, but then there's a lot of things that, like Sophie put it before, where like there's just some things that people don't excel at. And so it's like, it's also good to know the place where you can call your sibling. Like I would call Sophie with like almost all of those. And most of the time it's pretty in alignment with like you said, our family kind of is all in sync and you tend to get relatively similar responses from every person. But like there are certain things like from a friend standpoint, because you are on one side of the spectrum, Dude tends to be on another side of the spectrum. Yeah. And they both are really good in their respective lanes, but sometimes like it's easier to go to a sibling for something like that because they're closest to your age, closest to the experience, and they also might just like hit it right down the middle. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that's another time as well where if you don't want either pole or opposite side of that spectrum, you can go to, like, I would go to Sophie for something like that too.
Absolutely. What would be some things that I would be able to work on in certain situations, like with that kind of advice, or when you're coming to us, or just because here's the thing. I think with us now that you guys are older, I don't know that you're necessarily coming for like advice. I feel like you guys, it's almost like when your kids get older, you're in a different stage. So like the conversations that you're having, it's not an advice driven. It's almost like where you just want to talk things out.
That's true.
You know, so, I mean, you'll come to advice of like, oh my God, which doctor would I have to go see next? Yeah. But like, you guys are adults. So I think that unless you're really coming to us for a specific opinion, I think at the time, like we just can't throw opinions out to like adult kids. Yeah. It's more of like a conversation, I think.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I think, with something Sophie and I always said when we were younger is it, and we knew it always came from a good place, but the tendency to freak out about a health concern. Mm-hmm. But you have gotten night and day better about that. Maybe it's just because we've gotten older. But when Sophie and I were little, we told you we were having a headache and you were worried we were having an aneurysm. That does make kids a little nervous because
why?
because like, you might not even know what that means. And so suddenly you're like, I don't know, maybe I am having that. So I think that was something that younger us, Sophie's going true.
She has a thumbs up as she's walking through the office.
So glad we're in agreement.
So Sophie is like wanted to not participate, but like indirectly she's really kind of putting her input in.
So I'm glad Sophie and I agree on that. So I think that's something that took a long time. I think Sophie and I gave a lot of criticism and constructive criticism about that, and feedback being like, okay, like maybe we're not dying right now, and like it's okay, like if we have a fever, maybe we just have a cold and like not like the bubonic plague. And so like I think, but it's not impossible.
Not impossible.
Because to be fair, I did get the first case of swine flu in Illinois, and
she was case number 1.
It was case number 1.
And let the record show that I said to all of our friends when that came through, I said, oh fuck, one of our family members, not trying to, I really wasn't trying to jinx it, but I jinxed it, is going to get it. And everyone's like, Terry, you're so neurotic, it's not going to happen. And then all of a sudden, this girl over here was case number 1.
Yeah, so I also do understand why. But I think from that respect, like when you said what can like be improved, I think that has come a very long way, because now it's like I don't even get anxious anymore to tell you when I have symptoms. Before, it wasn't that I was anxious. I was just like, oh my God, like what if she does say something so niche and crazy and then I have it? Like, what am I going to do? But now I'm not worried about that anymore.
Because we protect you from amoebas.
And like now we can't eat deli meat ever again.
You can't eat deli meat.
Yeah.
And like, in
Can't
all
go to
fairness,
water.
I said the pandemic was going to become something.
You did tell me that, and then I did get really bad COVID, not from the trip that I did go on, but a separate bout of COVID. So yeah, but with the improvement, we have come a long way in that respect. Yeah, don't you feel like so?
Yeah, I think I think I keep more internal than I like explode. I mean, like, I think that a lot of it, like, I may hang up the phone with you and start hyperventilating.
Yeah.
But like,
you don't say it.
But I'm not necessarily like hyperventilating. If you call me and say like this headache has been going on for days and I can't get rid of it, I will then become a lot more freaked out.
Yes.
But part of the problem also with you and Sophie is, and I say this with truth and kindness.
Yeah.
You guys never have gotten just like a normal cold.
No, of course not.
Like, and so when you get sick, all of a sudden your oxygen levels and your like breathing just
heart
like
rate
plummets, you know, and I'm like, the girl can't get a fucking cold to save her soul. Like, this is not normal. And then Sophie, when she was little, like a headache would turn into like these seizure-like activities, and like
a cold would give her
and like she would like so it was always like this extra step of, you know, where some people were like, yeah, my kid like threw up for the night and they're better. My kid would like throw up and I'd be on the way to the ER because she was completely dehydrated, blood pressure drops and everything like that. So I'm more neurotic with it. But I think as you get to be adults, like I can't, as much as I'd like to, let the record say I'd like to, I would like to drag your ass to a hospital at any point in time.
Yeah.
But I know realistically I just can't do that, you know?
Totally. So that would come a long way. But with that also, just the overarching, like for example, when I was in Japan and I made the spontaneous executive decision to go to Korea 12 hours later, I never was going to tell you that. You just happened to be on speakerphone when Dew called me. Because that's like a prime example of what you tell one parent. No, we're not over it. But that's a prime example of what you tell one parent over the other. Because
travel. You'll go to Dad.
I will always go to him, because even if it's not like the best idea, he'll be like, okay, just be safe. That's not your response, right? Really at all. It's really not that way. And that's okay. I understand it. But so when that happened,
I've never really just been like, okay, go ahead, fly.
Call me when you get back. So when that happened, I just wasn't going to say anything. And then he's like, oh, what are you doing tomorrow? Like asking nicely. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy you asked. And I was like, are you by yourself? And he was like, oh, I'm with Moo. Why? And then I hear you go, why? And I was like, uh-oh. And I was like, well, I'm going to Korea, so I got to go. And then I hung up. But all that to say, you could have called me back and like freaked out. And maybe you freaked out here. But you didn't call me back freaking out. But I
freaked out here.
Yeah. But that's a lot better, because if I would have called you like 10 years ago and told you that, you would have really freaked out.
I would have gone to fly out to Korea.
To Korea, yeah. But so like that's what I'm saying. Like that type of stuff, I feel like we've gotten a lot better.
Yes, I'm telling you honestly, from me, anytime you're going to do those kind of things, go to Daddy first.
Of course,
because Daddy also knows how to kind of bring me down a little bit. Like Sophie went to Dubai. Sophie like decides to zip line off the tallest building in the world, and not tell us until she was on the ground, which, you know, thank God for that. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? What the fuck are you doing? But she's like, this is why I called you afterwards.
Yeah.
And I get that.
You would rather us call Dew first, though. So
I would rather somebody know that you're doing something.
Yeah.
And I'd rather you call Daddy first, so that when the blow comes in my way and I have to get it, I got to ask for a paper bag so I could just start breathing into it.
Yeah.
And a paper bag and Xanax maybe.
Yeah.
That it comes from Daddy, and Daddy's like, okay, this is what we're doing.
They're fine.
Yeah. Because what ends up happening with you guys is you're like, well, Mom, like, what do you want me to do? Like, this is what I'm doing. I've already booked this. What the fuck do you want me to do?
And it's the same thing that I did when I accidentally didn't tell you that I took the prop plane around the volcano in Costa Rica.
Was it accidental that you didn't tell me?
It was accidental that I booked it. because I thought it was a real plane. And then I was very scared to get on it, but it was my only way to the next destination.
Yeah.
So I just accidentally didn't tell you until I like prayed to God that I landed, and then I did. And then I told you. But yes, but that, to your point, yes, with travel and like exotic adventure things, we try never to go to you first.
Yeah.
Because that just isn't therapeutic for anyone. You know, not even you.
No. It's it kind of also transfers to the whole way of traveling anyways, because like when I used to be scared on planes, yeah, and I would like totally torture the rest of my family and pretty much everyone else that's on the airplane.
Totally.
I think it's
and
just like
staff,
and the staff, and they would like actually hand Daddy free drinks of alcohol.
I felt bad.
Is pity, because they're like, oh, if you gotta sit with her, dude, like this is yours. And I remember like you guys would be little and all of you would like draw straws and you'd be like, nope, nose goes.
I was sitting next to her.
No, who's the stranger that's going to take care of our mom?
Yeah.
Insulting.
But
it's okay,
better.
We're better from that too. But it's that whole travel spectrum of like where you know.
Could you get sick? Could you get hurt? Is this dangerous? All of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just better to go the other route.
Yes.
But that's okay, because when it comes to like coordinating cool things to do at travel, like once you are on the ground and the plane is over and there's no crazy jumping out of a high moving vehicle experience, like it's just about like booking fun restaurants and shows and putting together a great itinerary with like details and logistics, we would go to you first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, beyond the hotel booking and the airplane
that's where you
booking.
got your skill set too.
Yeah. And so we would go to you first with that. But if there's ever a adventure oriented itinerary, once again we go to do. But like if it's like at like fine dining, experiential stuff, I think it's just very much like Sophie said, like knowing the lanes of the people, because like Dude's not like he wouldn't necessarily want to jump off of the tallest building in the world, or wouldn't want to like take a prop plane or whatever. Like he might not want to do all those things, but he would do them before you would. And like you would want to go shopping for 17 hours before he would. So it's just kind of like knowing
which is an adventure.
It is an adventure. So that it's just knowing the person who it's relating to. Absolutely. But I also, like I said, I think there's a very good lane for the sibling in that respect too, because especially if you and your sibling are similar, and Sophie and I are similar in the sense that like we pretty much like to do most of the same things.
Oh yeah, you guys are pretty much on the same page with that. You guys would go. I'll try that.
I'll try it.
Yeah, for sure.
Most of the same things. Like, and so I think that's also where if we want like a voice of reason, that's basically like I don't want to say confirmation bias, but like kind of like that's why you go to your sibling, because they're also like, yeah, like our parents will probably tell us not to do that, but I would do it with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How about like the first time having sex?
Well, I went and got my IUD first. So.
Right, but telling Daddy and I that, I mean, okay, so here's the thing. Daddy and I actually had a podcast about this, because we were always kind of the thought process, when you're dating somebody, it's going to happen. Like, for us to think that it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Would be really stupid, especially since Daddy and I started dating so young, and it was going to be super hypocritical. But there's still that idea of like, oh my God, if I have to tell this to my parents. Like,
well, I think one thing that my dad did that was really, like, I still will never feel fully recovered from it, but it was like a really good thing in life, is he like genuinely did have the birds and the bees talk with me, which I learned most parents don't actually do.
They don't. You leave it on this. You learn it
like elsewhere, and I always thought that was so weird.
Renee Heller started you.
Shout out Humper Heller. Love you. But because I've actually like learned that a lot when I've been talking to friends throughout life. Like most of their parents never had that conversation with them. But Dude took me to Big Bull in Lincolnshire one night. Yeah. I hate that restaurant ever since. I've never liked it, and I sure as hell have never liked it since. And if you ask any person in my social circle,
never do stir fry again.
Nope. If you ask any person in my social circle what I say when somebody suggests Big Bull, I'm always like, I cannot go there because my dad taught me about blowjobs there in 8th grade, so I can't go. Yeah. It's just not like really exciting, you know. Yeah. So that was a weird conversation, but I'm grateful for it because it opened up the line of communication from a dad to a daughter, because us two, I feel like it's a lot easier with a mom and a daughter, because I brought you, like I made you sit with me for my first 2 IUD procedures in the gynecologist office in the room. Yeah. So like you already knew, like whatever, it's fine. But as a dad and a daughter, I feel like that's a little bit harder of a barrier to break
Oh,
through.
it is.
But he kind of nipped that in the butt pretty early on. He didn't necessarily want to admit it for a while, like that was happening in my life, because obviously, like, why would you want to admit that as a dad of a young daughter?
For sure.
But he never like really turned a blind eye to it. To me, he just kind of like was like we just don't need to talk about it, unless you want.
So, like,
to.
when he did sit down to have that conversation, and you did go to him, I think he initiated the conversation. Yeah,
because I was hearing things at school.
You were hearing things at school, and we wanted to make sure that you were as informed as possible. But so when you had this, so he actually did, as a father, is like, yep, this has got to be.
Yeah.
And we both said, it would be absolutely absurd for us if she's being honest with us of what she's going to be doing. Like, it'd be absurd for us to be like, oh my God, don't ever let that happen.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, don't do it, and I don't want to know about it, because that's just not going to end well.
Yeah.
So, but then when I do feel like you started with do on a good portion of it, but when it came down to the more intimate, like women issues,
for sure,
you would like,
I still do. Like, even at my most recent IUD, I literally thought that you were going to come with me, and then schedules changed. Like, I would still rather you come with me to stuff like that, because it just like makes me feel better. And I also have a very low pain tolerance, so like I'd rather someone be there. But yeah, no, and I will like still call you like with random things like, oh, I think like I have an ingrown hair, or oh, I have this weird mark on my boob, or what, like any girl things. Like I will say, literally, I lifted my shirt up last time I was here to show you something. I was like, what is this? So that like that's never really bothered me, and made me uncomfortable with like my relationship with you. I feel like I've always like changed in front, like that just doesn't really bother me ever. But as it relates to the sex thing, I mean, like, I feel like also I didn't want to say something like the very first night that I like had lost my virginity, but you knew, because you like heard it in my voice or something, and you like called it out, and then I just like admitted it, because I was like, what is lying gonna do about it? Like, she already knows it's coming. She helped me get my IUD, so like, why would I lie about it? So I feel like that's kind of always been like a.
Well, you came to me because we did keep it open. You did come to me and say, we are like now really contemplating it, like, and you are totally off it. Like, I want to be honest about it, and I want to be prepared. So whatever you were doing leading up to it, you were getting to that point anyway.
Yeah.
Which again, it wasn't surprising, because I don't know how many months you were in, and like, you guys, I mean, you're still together, so like, it wasn't, it's not shocking, but it is a compliment to do, because it is very easy for dads to just like go, no. Now, in all fairness, in a funny conversation that we had, daddy's like, there are moments that daddy's head will start spinning. Like, if we start going into depth about periods, like, he just like, you can look over him, and his eyes start rolling to the back of his head, and he's like getting all spinny and a little flushed. And then I was at the pool, and just as a funny conversation with you guys at our pool in Florida, and I'm like, okay, are you boyfriend's ass or tits, guys?
Yeah.
Like, and daddy's like, are you serious? Like, what? I don't want to know that. I don't want them to know what they want on my daughter. And I was like, oh, come on, like, whatever. And so I'm like, they've been together for so long, like, it even matters. I was just questioning. There are moments that we kind of have to shock factor him.
I told Jordan about that, and he laughed, and he's like, poor Joshy. Like, he's fine. Because also about him, it's good to keep Dew on his toes. Like, sometimes it's good to like send him out for tampons every now and then. So he has to go to Walgreens and go get it. Because he is a girl dad. Like, he's like literally tattooed on his arm, like he's meant to do stuff like that in this world. So, but it is good for a shock factor.
Yeah, it's like where you just like start to watch his like head start to spin, and
he's always like, there's a lot of vagina talk.
Yeah, like, and his head just starts like, okay. So then, what other things are like that you can think of that you have kind of. So it's so funny, because everything that you're talking about, Daddy and I did a podcast last week or the week before. That's part of this new series, where we wanted to talk ourselves on what we thought were going to be the things that you guys specifically go to each other with. And everything lines up. Nothing is a shock factor, but I am curious, because is there something that like we don't even realize that you go from one to the other and not know? Or that you go to one first to soften the blow for the other, or
I think one thing also that I tend to go, I think, well, I don't know if it's because Phil and Du are old friends, like best old friends.
Yeah.
But as it relates to like investing in retirement plan things, I tend to call him first because I don't know, I just feel like maybe he knows about IRAs and stuff. Maybe you do too. I just always instinctually call him first. So as it relates to like putting money into that type of account, or like how I should know like when I should max that out or like leverage that, I feel like I call him first. And a lot of times he's just like, oh, call Phil and he'll help you. But I don't know if that's just instinctually because his and Phil's friendship, but I do that. As it relates to...
Don't go to him on a day-to-day basis for payments.
No, I do not go to him for payments at all, ever, about like, any of that. No, I don't do that.
He's not the best with like a day-to-day like
bookkeeping
bill situation. Yeah,
no,
that's considered minutia to him.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else very specific that...
Or that if you're talking to Jordan, like, does he ever say, oh, like, you, like, this is your dad thing, or this?
Yeah, like even a car thing. When I was talking about Soph the other day, and I texted him, I was like, he's like, is she okay? Whatever. I was like, yeah, totally. I was like, my dad ran over, and he's like, that's very on brand for Josh. He's built for stuff like that. So like he does pick up on that. Or when I am having like weird symptoms, like heart related, similar to the health stuff we talked about, and I'm always like, oh my God, like what's happening? Do I need to go to the hospital? His first line always is, call your mom, she'll know. Like, so he's like, because he's been around long enough to know. Yeah, he's very in tune with stuff like that. And then even like in the Costa Rica thing or the Korea thing, he also knows. He's like, don't tell your mom about it.
It's also because he's protecting his livelihood.
Yeah, exactly.
He was just annoyed with I was just like, are you Jordan, kidding me? Seriously?
Yeah.
Could you not make a smarter decision?
So yeah, he's pretty in tune with kind of all of those.
Yeah, for sure.
Broad.
I could totally
ideas.
see that.
Yeah.
When you've been learning business.
Yeah.
And like, so obviously the teaching styles of what you brought to the table and like working with, you know, your family, right? Uh-huh. So Daddy basically, he's taught a lot. And because a part of how his teaching is almost throwing you into a lion's den. Yeah. You know, like, and so that's kind of, you know, and not in a lion's den, like, oh my God, what are they doing? Sink or swim thing. Like but a little bit of that because he also trusts that you can navigate and start doing all that. Mm-hmm. With that being said, you know, you have definitely strategically gone to him for those certain things to learn. And then, but what are like some of the things that he could do better on that teaching process? Because those are things because of his experience and what he's done to build these companies and build businesses. Part of how he teaches is how he learned. Totally. You know, and so that's why he kind of does what he does. Yeah. With a very good, by the way, like record of people that he has taught, mentored, and like becoming insanely successful people from young age up. But like, what are the things that you think he needs to work on in that aspect?
Well, that's funny because that's actually like exactly why he brought me to the meeting I was at today, like right before this, was because he literally wanted me there to kind of call out like his thinking in this process, because he's such a deal fanatic, as we know. Like he's always like, oh my God, that sounds like a great deal, or oh my God, that's so exciting. And then what he does is he'll get super excited about it, he'll want to do it, he'll go down the road on the project, and then he'll just like throw people into it because he's like, it's the best way to learn, it's the best way to get exposure. And then afterwards, I literally said, I was like, if you love this project, that's great. But are you going to be at the table of this project from the inception all the way till the end? Or are you going to have this project be a really sick idea, absolutely love it, and then just like throw a bunch of people into it and be like, kind of good luck? Mm-hmm. And so because I was noticing when we were sitting at the table, all in good faith, he was like, so if we were to do a project like this, is this the type of role that you plug like someone like yourself, to me, and like Kevin into, or something that you plug like Quentin and Eric into, and like trying to once again like leverage the like young aspiring talent and everything in our crew? And I was like, you totally can, but also you have to be in it too. Like you can't just like throw everybody else into your project and hope they learn exactly what's going on and like are in it the same way you're in it. And so he's like, that's why I brought you here works. I needed you to like tell me that. So I've started to like know that that's how he teaches, but it's also helpful to kind of pull him back a little bit and be like, sometimes people just don't know exactly what you know or what you want them to know right out of the gate. So, but also I feel like that's very in alignment with like how women are, how men are. A lot of times, like women are maybe a little more focused on providing like a helping hand through the process a little bit more.
For sure, yeah.
Where
Absolutely.
men might just be a little bit more like, because I see it with Jordan too. Like nobody helps Jordan at work. He's just kind of like from the day he started his new job, they were like, "Good luck," and like that's just kind of it.
Yeah.
And so like I don't necessarily know if that's just due or if that's how a lot of just like men and women are in the workforce. So but yeah, so like it's something that I see with him a lot. Like throw him to the fire, sink or swim, learn on the fly. But a little bit more of like instructional guidance could be helpful at times, and also he just has like deal ADHD, so sometimes it's like he kind of forgets the part of the deals that have already been talked about, agreed upon, whatever, because his brain is on like 6 deals at one time.
Totally, yeah.
But that's just kind of how he works.
And then like for me, for this stuff that we've kind of worked together, because you work closer on things with daddy, like on a day-to-day basis, on certain
things. Yeah.
And then there's like other things on the other aspects of sides for what we're working on. And so like what are the things from me that like to learn to work on, like those things that we've like kind of done? Because our side I think is more the creative side, but
definitely
not that that's not part of the business, but
for
like
sure.
you know, it's just a different aspect of it. But like that's also good information to learn, because for me, I think one of the biggest gifts that you could do is teach young people or have them be a part of something, because you're the next generation that's going to keep it going. I mean, like technically by daddy and my age, and not, I mean, we're older, but like, you know, the whole idea is you pass it on and then you see that next generation.
For sure.
And then hopefully you guys pay it forward to the next after that. So like, what are the things for me that I would have to like learn, teach, do, like that's.
I think finding, well, I think what you have continued to, in my opinion, continue to get better at, but it's still like, I mean, I'm still learning to do it, everyone's still learning to do it, is just finding the way to bridge a really creative minded person with a really like business oriented role, right? Because like there's on one, like if we take the hospitality business for one example, like the creative nature of that business is so critical as to like how it relates to the brand, the events, the promo, all of that. But then also from an operational and business standpoint, like knowing where, and this is something we're all learning, but just trying to figure out, consistently learning the balance between like how much creative is possible given the actual tangible restrictions, whether it be financial restrictions, legislative restrictions, whatever that literally prohibit certain things from happening. So I think it's also like being such a big like creative dreamer sometimes gets stunted when you're put in a business box.
For sure.
Because you feel like all your creative visions can't come to fruition because there's a lot of other things that are blocking it from happening. But I feel like that's
how to like teach that. Like how do I work better at teaching? Like I
have no idea. But it's just something that I feel like we've continued to learn. I mean, like I think I literally don't know, but like I went and had a meeting with Sean today, like an hour meeting that was solely about like what marketing and branding things are feasible given our current like operational restrictions. And so like I think meetings like that I'm going to continue to try to do more, because I think it allows me to, and like when Quentin sends out financial reports now, I sent Quentin a separate email and asked him to break that down for me in dumber terms. So I can then understand why when I'm looking at those numbers, like why if I wanted to go and activate acai bowls at Playdate tomorrow, why I couldn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like trying to like understand it from like it's really hard when you have a lot of creative vision.
It is.
And there's just like not enough like business operation, financial backing to make those things happen. It can make a creative person very frustrated. But I'm like, so that's something that I'm trying to do is like, I literally sent Quentin a separate message. I was like, when you send these out, please send me like a dumb version so I can understand why I can't do the things I want.
It's so interesting that you're saying that, because so Quentin had brought the reports to Eric, and I was listening to them the other day talk about a bunch of numbers, and I'm okay with numbers on a day-to-day, like bookkeeping for our companies and all of that stuff. But when they go like deep into like data spreadsheets and stuff like that, my brain starts hearing other languages.
Totally.
And I start, it doesn't work. But what I said to him is like, what I'd like to see broken down is all of these numbers. I'd like to go back and see what was going on in this city at the time all those things were happening. Was there a game going on? Was there a concert going on? Was there like, because it can also see why we're doing well in the downtown area compared to 12 South. Totally. Why is 12 South doing well? Like, what is happening in these areas? And he's like, oh, yeah, we should probably do that. Because my mind was kind of like, if we can look at what's happening in the city at these times, maybe I can take my creative ways and incorporate what we could do to market those things during those times to bring the business at that time. But in order to do that, this city, like there's always something going, like legitimately when I tell you like every night, right? So how do we start working off of, there's like a special show at the Ryman, we didn't even know about it. How can we make sure that our bars are marketing when the Ryman is doing that? Totally. And so that's why I'm trying to bring into that business sense of how to bring into how to create something that and bring it into fruition based on the other things that are going on. Yeah. Because my creative stuff, like there's so many different ideas, as you know, I have in my head at all times, but like it's not feasible to be able to do all of them. Yeah. So like, I guess that would be like something to help work on, like that I could be able to do that. I just don't know how to teach that. Like that I'm not sure like what to do to teach, because you and your sister technically, and actually Daddy more than he ever has been able to come up with all these creative concepts. Like, we've now learned how to be able to do that because our company allows us to do that. Mm-hmm. And even Daddy, who puts that side of him down, he's actually pretty good at it. But I want to be able to teach, like Daddy wants to be able to teach things to you. I feel like he's able to teach more in that sense than I can, but I would like to know what I can learn to teach. That would be
I mean, I think
helpful.
You teach a lot. I think, but I do think, and I know we talked about this in Florida, I think the best teachers are those who, like you said, who want to learn a lot. And so, like, that's why, because I always like to try to teach people things too, is like, I noticed that as a creative business-minded person, the part that I was lacking the most was the number side of the business, which honestly I find to be the most boring, like you do. But it really is the only thing that can drive anything else. So I just learned
it's tangible.
It's tangible.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, so like as you asked, like, what can you help teach? Like, I think if you, sat with Quentin a couple times a month here and there, whatever, and like did a deep dive into like what the numbers looked like and why we can do certain things and not do certain things, that then when I ask the questions, like you could tell me why, or when Katie asked the questions, you could tell, so I think just learning from other people and then teach other people is probably the best way to teach.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, because we all don't know everything. But yeah, that would be my 2 cents.
Okay. Well, I think that that all kind of aligns with what we're able to do and not do, and why you go to certain parents or more than the others. You guys never really got into trouble, so like there was never where you had to like slyly go to one. I will say, as part of Daddy and my conversation, and Daddy knows this now, is Daddy was way tougher for schooling than I ever was. Yeah. And so I think sometimes you would be more, and Sophie would be more inclined to come tell me something when it came to, because, and it's not that I don't believe in education, I just also don't think it's the end all be all. And I don't think that if you guys are trying your hardest, that like, if you got a C on something, I'm kind of like, okay, like, whereas Daddy was like, what, And so I think when you were younger, that was a lot harder. But I think Daddy now has completely understood that was just not okay.
Yeah. But I will say because I agree with that. And I've always said that. I will say though, on the opposite side, so we just told me I have to wrap up because I have to go to the airport. But on the opposite side of that, when I did get a really good grade or something on the project or whatever, because school, like you love school and like you think it's great and whatever, but it's not for everybody. because if I told you I got a C and you were like, that's great, like you worked your hardest, and then I told you I got an A, you'd be like, that's great, you worked your hardest.
Totally.
If I wanted that, like, oh my God, I know how much work that took, and I was like, and like, that's an amazing grade. Might have given that a little bit more, just because, once again, because you were so even keeled about school in a good way, that if I came home and got a B, C, or D, as long as I didn't fail the class, as long as I tried, you didn't care.
Yeah.
And so those are just kind of the differences.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And actually, I could totally see that now that you brought that up. I never even thought about that because my reaction would have been exactly the same.
Like, good job.
Like, that's amazing.
Awesome.
Like, but like, as opposed to going, oh my God, you know, like, So, which that makes sense, actually.
You wouldn't notice it at the time. But
yeah. All right. Well, again, these are just things like it's all about bringing people into our lives. I think it's so fun because people always ask us, like, God, you guys like all have such a unique like family dynamic of what you do together, how you work together, how you offset each other, how you come to the office and twerk. All those things.
That's what people ask a lot.
They ask a lot about Tommy's twerking. But I think it's so important, like, as part of our podcast, to go back to these basics and talk about them and like be able to like talk about the good, bad, and the ugly.
Of course.
You know, laugh through some things that are just like we know we're so bad at, and like and like make jokes of it, but also like bring in the important things that we could learn from too.
Totally.
So
this was great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Safe travels. Sydney's heading back out of town again because the girl lives in the skies.
Yep. It's calling.
It's calling. Thanks, all. Stay tuned to the Big Plan Podcast. We'll see you later. Bye.